We could tell you exactly why Bombas socks, t-shirts, and underwear are so comfortable. We could talk about our soft fabrics, or how we donate one item for every item you buy. But we think our customers said it best. So we hired some professional voice actors to read real customer reviews.
Bum dickities on my piggies.
It's like being hugged by an angel.
I borrowed a pair from my son and didn't want to give them back.
Give an item when you buy an item and get 20% off your first purchase at bombas.com/comfy. That's BOMBAS.com/comfy.
10, 9, 8. Ignition sequence has started. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
You have entered Untold Radio AM. And now broadcasting from a secret location, your hosts, Joel Sturgis and Doug Hajicek. All right, we are back. Back and better than ever. Let me know if I'm staticky, whether I'm not, whether I'm good, whether I'm bad, whether I'm indifferent. I'm Joel Sturgis, that's Doug Hajicek. If you're just tuning in, this is Untold Radio AM. And hey, we forgot to tell everybody who our great guest is tonight, Doug. While we're talking.
Yeah, go ahead.
That would be. We're going to be having Josh Wolf Turner on the show tonight. And he is the host of a podcast called the Paranormal Round Table. And it's a really popular podcast. I know quite a few guys have listened to it, so I'm looking forward to having him on. And of course, I'll be at the bottom of the hour, and that's coming up here in just a few minutes. But as we were talking before we left, organisms and the way that, you know, things work together. Now, that would be the very definition of symbiotic relationship, right?
Could be, yeah. Like in the ant world, like for instance, ants. They consider ants to all share the same stomach.
Really?
Because they do a lot of saliva swapping.
Ah, I suppose, yeah, because then again, ants, everything's for the colony.
Yes, as it is bees.
So that would stand to reason that they really are kind of like one organism.
But is it any different than our cities? Which literally, we're all doing stuff for the city.
That's true.
Right now, we're part of the nervous system.
Yeah,
you know,
you're not wrong.
Who are we serving? Well, we're talking and communicating to the other cells. You know, it's really weird though if you really think about.
Blah, we built these cities on rock and roll. Oh, sorry.
Oh my God, you didn't actually sing, did you? I'm never going to unhear that ever.
It is Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
Wednesday.
Just trying to bring that up again.
I am. Dolly Parton, by the way. Nominated.
Yeah.
Go Dolly, that's what I say.
You know, back in the 80s, I used to hang out with a few notable rock people, including some of them that are now in the Rock Hall of Fame, like Hart. And
really?
Yep.
Interesting.
Used to, because nothing I did. It just happened to a drummer for some of these big rock bands married into the family.
In your family?
Yes, and got to meet all sorts of people, and it just, you know, you get to meet people, and next thing you know, you're out fishing and you're doing stuff. And I used to take a number of rock and roll guys out fishing, and
there you go. There you go. Yeah, I got to know a lot of the rockers through radio.
Yeah,
and so I became friends with them. So some of them I still talk to this day. I'm still friends with. They're Rock and Roll Hall of Famers. You know, just, you know, people we text back and forth once in a while, just talk, you know, just kept in touch, that kind of thing.
Very cool, very cool. And
yeah, it's funny the way life
By the
works.
way, I was going to mention, our guest probably isn't feeling the greatest, as if so many people I've been talking to are getting corona. They're not terrible,
Yeah.
you know, they're like I am. I'm still recovering too. Still feel a little weak. And there was an article today that said that they've figured out why there's such a thing called long COVID. And apparently between 31 and I think it was 31%, 60% of the people are getting long COVID, meaning, you're winded, you're fatigued, you're fucked. Yeah. And they're saying that COVID's attacking the mitochondrial DNA. And the mitochondrial DNA is kind of what, it's basically all of our little fuel cells. Mitochondria that through, I think it's TPF, creates energy.
Yeah.
And apparently the COVID is affecting the amount of chemical process that's going on in each mitochondrial, and therefore we're suffering fatigue.
I've heard that from quite a few people that they say I got COVID, I just don't feel right.
I don't.
I feel tired. Yep. I just don't feel like myself. I'm not interested in things I once was. Stuff like that. And so, that's they're calling. So I've heard the name COVID long hauler. That's something. I don't know if that's the same or not, but I know there are people that are still suffering with some symptoms of COVID, even though they're supposed to be over the COVID, like the lack of taste, lack of smell, stuff like that. So
I still don't have my taste is not straightened out. I've been pretty much just craving like beef and meat, and I tried to eat a donut, and I was like, oh my God, this just tastes like a pile of chemicals.
You see, you're craving more organic food, is what you're saying.
Yep. Yeah, salads. Like I ate this giant salad the other day. It tasted great. And but then if you try to eat a candy bar, it ain't happening, man. It ain't happening. It tastes like blah. Which is weird because all the things that used to taste really good taste like crap.
Yeah.
And whoever got excited about eating a salad, I was like going at that thing like a maniac.
Well, I suppose because it tastes real to you.
I don't know. It's just it
good,
changed all of my taste. So anyhow, we were talking about mitochondria. Okay, so mitochondria is basically, it says here, it's the crucial organelle, they call it. It's an organelle within the cell, and it's in every cell, and it's tasked with turning oxygen and other nutrients into ATP. And that's the ATP allows us to move our muscles. It fuels kind of our whole body. It's like think of mitochondria as the little energy factories.
Okay. Yep. Sure.
And apparently COVID is destroying our mitochondrial DNA. And of course, I believe we make new mitochondria, but it's destroying it as quick as it's making it.
Quick as it can be made, it's being destroyed.
Yeah, which is interesting. Yeah. And so the question is, are the vaccines at all doing anything to the mitochondria either? I don't know. I haven't read anything yet. Don't know. Something I'll be looking out for in the future, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, are you feeling any better, Doug? I mean, are you starting to feel like yourself, or where are you at?
So last night, I installed something on a motorcycle that's been sitting there since I got COVID. Not a huge job, and it wasn't a fun job. But for the first time in 2 weeks, I actually felt enough energy to tackle it and get it done, which is not like me because I'm usually tackling 50 items a day.
Yeah.
And I just drained of my energy, my normal energy.
Do you think that's part of the reason why we're having such a hard time getting people that have had COVID get back to work?
Yeah, I do. I think it's just not being talked about. I don't think nobody has verbalized it.
Yeah, I think you're right. Because we hear all about the economy, like I said last week, the impacts that way that COVID has left, but we don't hear much about the long-lasting health effects.
So I went and Googled. Remember, we were talking about the paradigm shift of COVID, and you coined. Yeah. It was you that coined the COVID paradigm. Yeah. New COVID paradigm. Yeah. So I Googled that, and it was like I haven't had time to read the articles yet, but a whole bunch of government articles came up that actually used that term. And I was like, and I read with Google, the little few lines that come up, and I read those. It looks pretty interesting because it looks like somebody's taken notice that there's been a whole bunch of paradigm shifts from the COVID.
Yeah, there has been.
It's affected our schools. It's affected our government. It's affected, all these mandates and jobs, and it really has messed with everything.
Oh, everything. Life is not anywhere near like it was before COVID hit.
But we didn't need to mess everything up. We could have just said, here it is. We got another flu type thing. You're going to have to live with it.
I've also heard some people say that it's also shown people, especially those that have had COVID, how short life is, how delicate it is. Yeah. And some of them just don't want to be stuck sitting there working, slaving away.
Oh, yeah.
They want to go enjoy life.
Yeah, because I've seen friends and family die and parents. And there's a lot of death. There's no doubt. I'm not belittling COVID. I'm doing the opposite. But I do know that generally all of the things that we did, whoever decided, the powers that be, to close businesses and this and this and that, all the things, it didn't help anything.
No, ultimately it did not.
No, it's just as many people died then of suicide.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. We could do a whole show just on that. But we're not. We got a great show on tonight. We got Josh Wolf Turner on. He is a podcaster. He is the host, like I said earlier, of the Paranormal Round Table.
Yeah, I was going to mention Josh. What really strikes me about Josh is he's basically a walking verbal library of stories, of cryptids, of the paranormal. He's a very open-minded guy, but man, does he have the stories. Like, I'm talking thousands and thousands of stories he has memorized from witnesses that he's talked to, in many cases personally. So he does a lot of interacting with people. And so you're going to hear some really amazing stories.
Sounds great. I cannot wait. That'll be a lot of fun. Get him on and talk about that kind of stuff. It's going to be a good time right there. So you're not going to want to miss that.
No.
It'll be a good time. But anyhow, look at the clock. Do you want to say anything? I mean, what you got going on there, Doug? I mean, any projects you want to talk about? Anything like that? Because
I've been just laying low, but I'm about ready to get back to work. I had, I did my first little project yesterday, and it turned out good. And I thought, damn, that's good. But I'm like, have I ever been lazy the last 2 weeks? It's been terrible.
Oh. If you want to watch a good show, if you're into historical dramas, the wife and I, we watched a show called 1883. It's a mini-series, or it's a series, and it's actually really darn good.
And where would I find this?
That's Paramount Plus. So if you have Paramount Plus, check it out. It is really good. It has Sam Elliott in it, which, of course, anything with Sam Elliott, it's usually top-notch anyway. Hell of an actor.
Did you see his show that he was in about Bigfoot?
Yes, I did. Yeah, the movie. Yep.
That was weird. That was weird.
That was an odd movie.
I thought that was
one of his few misses, I think.
Well, I thought it was really good up until the point where he started looking for it.
Yeah, right. But we got to get out of here there, Doug. We got to get Josh on the horn. So we're going to be right back right after this.
Great.
Hi, Tom Bodette. If you can hear me, then you have an internet connection, which means you can do cool things online, like listen to streaming radio, obviously, or watch a video of a monkey washing a cat. Let your freak flag fly. Or you can book a room at a great price at Motel6.com. Isn't the internet wonderful? Everything you want right at your fingertips, and whoa, did not need to see that. I'm Tom Bodette for Motel 6, and we'll leave the light on for you.
Unexpected reactions to smart financial decisions brought to you by feedthepig.org.
Well, I finally did it. My student loan is totally paid off.
I can't believe it.
I can't believe it either. I paid more than the minimum each month, and soon enough, it was gone.
So you're just giving up?
Giving up on what?
The life of luxury. Egyptian cotton, caviar Thursdays, designer everything.
What are you talking about?
Our plan. What happened to winning the lottery and mastering the art of the perfect mimosa? Hosting galas, wearing enough jewelry to require a bodyguard, vacationing in the French Riviera, and then buying it.
I just thought maybe it was time to prepare for my future. You know, set some financial goals, make some smart investments, open a 401k.
Financial goals? Investments? A 401k? You are horrifying right now. Listen, if winning the lottery were easy, everyone would do it.
When it comes to financial stability, don't get left behind. Get tools and tips for saving at feedthepig.org. This message brought to you by the American Institute of CPAs and the Ad Council.
Northern Tool and Equipment.
So me and the boys head out to tailgate today and find some other fans in our spot.
Well, it happens.
Cheering for the wrong team.
Oh, this is war.
Even worse, they've got this couch set up and everything.
A couch?
Yeah, it's sectional.
All right, first thing, don't ever use the word sectional again.
Done.
Second, I want you to grab a 4,700-pound tow chain with J-hook and grab hammer. Throw that on the back of your truck.
Got it.
Now you're going to Hail Mary the J-hook over the end of that couch. Time to find a better spot for your new friends.
That should do it.
There's no problem a little horsepower can't solve. Northern Tool and Equipment.
Taking a family of 5 to the amusement park can cost a small fortune.
Oh, yeah. So to save some money, we thought, hey, let's bring the amusement park to us.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
All right. Step right up, young man. Are you ready to ride the wacky waterfall?
That's just the bathtub with the shower head running.
Nope, it's the wacky waterfall.
It's the shower, Dad.
Waterfall.
Wacky.
There's an easier way to save. To get a free rate quote, go to geico.com. Then buy online, over the phone, or at your local Geico office.
Green light. Hey girl, school zone. I'm getting hungry. Car changing lanes. You want to meet me for pizza? Stop sign. Intersection clear. Yeah, street. Pizza sounds good. Ballin Street? Girlin Street!
It's hard to concentrate on 2 things at once, like texting and driving. Stop the text, stop the wrecks. How will you stop texting and driving? Tell us at stoptextstopwrecks.org. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
And welcome back to Untold Radio AM. I'm your host, Joel Sturgis. Right along with me is Mr. Doug Hajicek. Hey, for all you guys that might be podcasting this later and you're asking yourself, how do I listen live? I'd like to listen live, be part of it. That is done to untoldradio.com. Right over there, untoldradioam.com. Right at the top of the page, you're going to see a button that says Listen Live. Right there, you can listen live because we broadcast the show live. And so if that's what you choose to do, we'd love to have you guys listen live if that's what you'd like to do. But we also enjoy you guys podcasting too. So either way you get it, it's a good way for us. Right, Doug?
Yep.
Well, tonight we got a great show on tap for you. We have paranormal investigator, enthusiast, all-around great guy. Might not be 100% because he's got, as we mentioned earlier, not feeling the greatest. Josh Wolf Turner. He is going to be joining us, and he is the podcaster himself, and he hosts the Paranormal Round Table, which is a really, really successful and fun show to listen to. And if you never listened to it, give it a listen. It's a lot of fun. I think you'll like it. Now, Josh has been at the paranormal for many years, and he also discusses real accounts of the paranormal on his show. And he also deals with cryptids, supernaturals, demonics, you name it, they deal with it on that show. Well, Josh, I'm kind of hit the ground running. I'm going to ask, what got you into the paranormal to the point where you wanted to do a podcast?
I just wanted to be rich and famous, and so I knew this was
yeah, you're in the wrong industry. You're in the wrong industry.
I knew this was the fastest way to do that. So I was like, you know what? I gotta see something. I gotta see Bigfoot or La Llorona or something, and so I did. I saw the Dog Man. So
really,
actually, I did. That's a joke, but obviously, but yeah, when I was 15 years old, I saw something with a friend of mine who was now a preacher in my hometown, and I do talk to him regularly. I saw him around Christmas time, and we exchanged. I always go by his house, and he always, makes it a point. I was with a couple of my nephews when I went by there, and we were doing we buy like a lot of steaks, and we give them away as gifts, and a lot of people that are less fortunate or whatever. And so I went by his house and I dropped off some New York strips, and he always is making tamales that time of year, and so we exchanged or whatever. And he brought it up again to my nephews. He was like, because his son is getting older, his youngest son, and I can't believe that he's already like in high school. And he's like, oh yeah, like he kind of remembered. He hadn't seen me in a few years because the last few years he wasn't there. He was either with his grandmother's or whatever.
Sure.
And he said, oh yeah, he's the guy that you saw the thing with. And he goes, yeah, that weird looking werewolf. That's what my friend calls it. He doesn't call it the dog man. He doesn't really know it as the dog man. And of course, those that are initiated will know what that is, because if you study the cryptozoology, it's real big up there as far as cryptids go. It's like chupacabra, Bigfoot, Dogman. I mean, those are the big ones. Mothman. Yeah. And I didn't know what it was when I first saw it either. I didn't know it was a Dogman. I had no idea what that was.
Yeah.
I didn't, like I didn't go tell somebody, hey, I just saw a Dogman, because the name sounds so off-putting and weird too. It sounds like a circus freak or something.
Yeah, it really wasn't the paranormal lexicon at this point, is what you're saying. It really wasn't big at that point, or you just didn't know about it?
No, I didn't. I'd never heard that term. The first time I heard that term, my brother is my half brother. He actually lived in Michigan for a long time, and I was looking for this thing. We were talking about it, me and a friend, and he told us, he's like, this sounds like a dog man. Like, he's up in Michigan. They have a thing, it looks like a werewolf, but they call it a dog man. And, he lived there for a long time with his mom and his stepdad. And so whenever we started talking about this, I started typing it up, looking, whatever. And a bunch of stuff popped up about Dogman, which, led me to Dogman Encounters Radio with Vic Cundiff. And that's how I ended up getting on the show. I told my story. And after I told my story, me and him talked. And I said, look, I have a lot of research I've done on this creature. And like I said, it wasn't called the Dogman. And people around Texas, you'd interview them and they'd say, man, I saw this, weird looking critter. It had this snout. And then when they describe it, backward bent legs. And, you're like, okay, that's what I saw. The year that I saw this creature, she's actually a distant cousin of mine. She saw it in December. A couple of friends of mine, I later found out, had seen it in December. And it was very unusual. My wife, how I met her was through my research when she gave me her story. And she saw it the same year I did, when she was a little kid, and it came into their house. And that's how me and her met. And so, you get all these stories and you talk to all these people, and, it's got to go somewhere, the information. Right now, I know 2 or 3 people who have tons and tons of stories and encounters, because they're kind of, they do their own research and whatever, but they're not great speakers. They don't, they're not interested in doing podcasting, and they're not authors. And so, they're just researchers, and people who do that. Those people make a large contribution to my show, because they're not themselves looking to how do you say it? Like, they don't tell the story, but they do talk to people, and one guy in particular, he's given me a lot of information. about these subjects, and he's always researching, and he always gives me his information, and we talk, and over the last few years, he's been a gold mine of leads, and so I got 3 or 4 people that do that for me. It's like almost like a part-time job that they're willing to donate their time and effort and help me. And I would say that they're an extension of our team. And then the PRC fan base themselves, they're very rabid. And they're always, anytime I come on a show and talk about a subject, they always give me 2 or 3 stories about that subject. And so it's like, I'll be wanting stories about a certain subject, and I'll tell my wife, I'll be like, it's funny because once I tell these 2 or 3 stories on the show, I'll get a bunch of stories to do another one about that same subject.
Yeah, snowballs, because you put it out there, and then people hear it, and they contact you. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah, and my original host, Armando Salazar, or Sal as everybody knew him, he passed away back in the summer of COVID, which I actually have right now. I'm getting over. This is my second bout of it. It's not nearly as bad. This is the Omicron. It's more like a bad head cold, but the Delta was something else. It was really hard, but I survived it. Some of my colleagues didn't. At the same time that Armando passed away, my friend Johnny Henderson from the Cryptid Studies Institute, he died.
Man, I'm really sorry to hear that.
Yeah, he was a good guy. And I did a lot of talking with him and exchanging information. I work closely with the NADP, the North American Dogman Project. I'm good friends with the leaders of the organization, and I know all the directors. And I guess you guys are in the Midwest, right? That's where you guys are?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, that was D.A. Roberts. He's a good friend of mine. He's an author, and he's also the director of the Midwest. And the leader of the organization, the founders, Jody Cook, I guess Eugene Davis actually left. I made friends with them.
Career Builder is made for people who have that thing. You know, those superpowers that make you good at your job, the skills you bring to work. And Career Builder knows those skills make you right for other jobs too. Higher paying jobs with benefits. Jobs you never thought of trying. Are you a people person? Work from home as a customer service rep? Are you organized and like driving? Become a delivery driver. You have the skills it takes, and CareerBuilder.com has the jobs to get you hired fast. Visit CareerBuilder.com.
And we have an open friendship with sharing of information and stories, which is also a valuable tool. And so there's never a shortage of stories. I always tell people, if you are a researcher and you're doing research into this subject and you're running out of stories or people to talk to, you're not doing a good job, because there are tons and tons of people who see these things. I mean, and I'm more well known now, but I had been doing research, for 30 years, and so I just constantly getting people's encounters, getting their stories about Dogman, Bigfoot, the healing of and ghosts, you name it, and there's somebody always has a story. And I just don't understand people who say that they can't find information or stories or whatever. But not all stories are show worthy. You'll get half a dozen stories, and 2 will be, worthy of putting on a show, because a lot of them are just like, well, I was driving and I saw a Bigfoot on the side of the road.
Yeah.
And that's going to be like a whole. That's what a lot of encounters are. But if you dig deep, a lot of times people have more than one encounter, and I believe there are people that we know that are like experiencers. They go beyond the veil. I think that these people, like when I was born, my abuelita said I had ojo totaro, which is like, the gift of the eye. You can see these things. You can see into the 4th dimension. You can see into the 4th density, whatever you want to call it, which is the immediate level above us, And I believe that you can see these things coming in and out of this world. And one of my colleagues, Linda Godfrey, she's an author. I'm sure you probably have heard of her. And
I know Linda quite well.
Oh yeah, she's a very, very dear friend of mine, good person, and she'd always told me that she really believed, and we talked about this on air and off air, that she believed that these things they would come out in and out of our world from another place, and when they're in our world, they have to eat and live, and they become more physical the longer they're here.
Yeah,
which is really weird when you think about it. I explained to my audience that if you drew a piece of paper like a stick figure, and drew a little circle, a little square, whatever, and you can see this stick figure. We can call him Tom, and Tom, to see what Tom sees, all he sees are lines in front of him. He doesn't see the circle or the square. Mm-hmm. He just sees lines, and that's all he sees. He's not aware of us at all. We're aware of him in every capacity. Tom couldn't take that circle, let's call it a ball, and the square, let's call it a box. He couldn't put that in that box and hide it from us. We could see it because he's in the two-dimensional world and we're the three-dimensional world. So there's nothing he can do. He can't hide from us. Whereas if you are, in the third dimension, which we are, those that are in the fourth dimension are going to be able to see everything we do, but we can't see them. They're hidden.
Gotcha. Yeah. Because they're above our dimension.
Mm-hmm. And that's actually what the word jinn means. It's the Arabic term for hidden ones. A lot of my friends that are the Islamic faith, they and of course the Christians, they believe they're demons or jinn, And I am, by definition, I guess, Christian. I'm not really religious, but I believe in Christ. But I also I do have a very esoteric mindset, and I think that if people would look at things in more of a spiritual nature than a physical one, we would find more answers. But unfortunately, there's this large camp that believes that all these things are physical. Oddly enough, some of my really good friends, Tim Gerhardt and Lyle Blackburn, I've did a show with them back in October. Very good friends of mine. I actually was talking to Lyle on the phone earlier, and before me and I think Doug got on the phone. That's your colleague's name, right?
Yep, Doug Hajicek. Yep.
Yeah, Doug. Yeah, I was making sure because I'm, like I said, I'm a bit under the weather. I'm a little bit groggy, but I was just on the phone with him before, and him and Ken both have this view of Bigfoot, that it's a physical creature, but they think that Dogman is supernatural. Mm-hmm. But there is a large camp in the Dogman community that would fiercely fight that this thing is completely physical. And I challenged that, even though for years what I saw, I thought it was completely a physical being. I no longer believe that.
What changed your mind?
Well, here's the rub. In December of 2019, I went to visit with my friend's brother, who also saw this thing. And he was remodeling a house. And oddly enough, that house was where a person, I've never looked this up or verified this 100%, but when we were teenagers, it was rumored that a man that had lived there, his wife had left him, and he got depressed and he killed himself. I know there was a guy that lived there that drank a lot, and I don't know if it was whether he drank himself to death or how he did it or whatever, but he died in that house, and people would still see him. Like sometimes people would be, walking down the street. My friend's little brother, he claimed that he saw him with a couple of his friends sitting in the window, looking out the window, and people would see this like man that looked forlorn and sad, And it was always like this, go up in there and look in the window type thing, So my friend was actually remodeling this house, and me and one of my nephews had gone there to talk to him. And we were talking about buying the adjacent property to his dad's house, which is actually where I ended up with the Dogman creature. It ended up, and I thought it was just ironic. It would be weird to buy that piece of property, and then I just was going to build on it. So we were like there measuring it, and we were talking to the owner. And afterwards, we had gone over, and he goes, "Let me show you some work I'm doing right now in this house." So we walked down the street, catty corner to his dad's property, and we went into the house. And I said, "Oh, isn't this the house that's haunted?" And he goes, "Yeah, it's haunted. It's supposed to be." And I said, "You had anything weird happen?" And when we started talking like that, we hear a loud crash, a bang in the master bedroom. And we all look at each other, and then we walk in there, and you can see where there were two beams of wood that were laid across these sawhorses, and the sawhorses had fallen inward, which was really weird. I mean, that was odd. It's like, how does that happen? It's level ground. It shouldn't have happened. And we just kind of said, okay. So we all walked out, and my friend is, that's my friend's brother, the one that I saw the dogman with. And he goes, see that kind of stuff right there? He goes, it's weird, man. He goes, like, I'll be working, and I feel like something touched my back, and there's this weird stuff that'll happen. And, he goes, and then we're sitting there talking about it, and so when we were talking about this, I said, yeah, it reminds me of that thing we saw that night, and because he always maintained that it was a demonic entity. Yeah. And I told him, I said, you really believe it was like a demon, right? And he goes, yeah, oh yeah, absolutely. And I said, why is that? I guess it looks so flesh and blood. He goes, man, when that thing was walking through the alley between the houses, he said, I saw it go by the window, and I saw this black vapor come off the back of its neck. And he had never shared that with me. And so when I asked, I said, whoa, wait a minute, what? Like vapor, like a black, vapor? And he goes, yeah, it was like a black, like smoke or something coming up the back of its neck. And I was like, what the heck? And I said, Junior, you never told me this at all. He goes, you never asked. He goes, you never asked me. Nobody's ever asked me that. And I said, that was the first he'd ever told me that. And so 29 years, went by, and me always thinking that it was a physical creature. Now, I lived in a haunted house for years, and I talk about that on my show on Paranormal Round Table, and I've brought multiple guests onto my show who lived in that house, who can attest to the weird things that went on in that house. And I just had never, I always thought it was two different things. I thought I saw a physical creature one time, and then beyond that, I lived in this house where there was a bunch of activity, and I worked at a job site where I had some activity. But I never really thought it was all the same, Now I do, and so when we were leaving, I was with my nephew, Anthony. And I said, I can't believe he told me that. I was like, I never knew. He goes, you never heard that before at all? And I was like, no. And it was just weird, and so the night that their mother died, his son, one of his sons, my friend Daniel Robles is who I'm referring to, that was his brother, the one that was telling me that. But Daniel, he had told the story the night that his mother died, and one of his sons is named after me. His name is Josh. And he was talking about liking my nickname, He goes, I wish that I had your nickname instead of being called Josh, And I said, yeah. I said I like it better than being Josh. But I said, if you knew how I got that nickname, it might not be as cool, And his dad goes, well, there's a pretty crazy story behind that, and that's when it would be his second oldest son, Josh, said. He's like, oh, is that the thing y'all saw that night? And so he told that story to everybody that was there. And his son, that's now a teenager, would have been a little bitty boy. He wouldn't have even remembered or whatever. So he reiterated that story this past December to my two nephews and to his son, the youngest one. And, he's never changed from what he saw that night. I've never wavered in my... what I saw, and I know in my convictions that I saw it.
Tell us the story, Josh. Josh, tell us what happened.
Yeah. Okay. So here's what happened. It was Halloween night, and I was coming back from hanging out with some friends, and my mother, who passed away in May, she's very, very dear to me. Not from COVID. She had a stroke, and unfortunately, and so. She passed away, but my mother had typically she was pretty strict about certain things, But it was Halloween night, and she knew that being a teenager, I was in trouble as a kid. And she tried to put a tight leash on me, but I just was going to be, what I was. So she said, you know what, you can stay till 11 o'clock, which is pretty liberal for, small town Texas. It's like 11 o'clock is pretty late. And so, Daniel's mother was big on the church and everything else too. And she said the same thing. She's like, she actually was surprised. She told him you can stay as long as his mother says you can, but she thought it was going to be like 8, 9 o'clock.
Yeah.
And my mother was having her hands full. I had just gotten released from a facility because I got a lot of trouble when I was a youth. I was in all kinds of places. And so my mom said, you're going to do what you're going to do. Just be home by 11. I'll be happy. So when Daniel said, his mom said 11 o'clock, she's like, nah. So she called, and they had this conversation in Spanish. And she said, oh, okay, all right. So then she gets off the phone. She says, okay. And his mom said 11 o'clock, you all better be here by 11 o'clock. You better be here. So we got to his house, and it was already after 11. And I knew I was in trouble. And there's a tradition in my hometown that's still there to this day. The teens will go to Davis Street and throw eggs at cop cars. And we would get up on these roofs of these houses, and there'd be about 20, 30 of us, and we'd throw the eggs, and then we'd run, and then they would chase after us, and never got caught, and we'd always wear masks, And so we were coming back, and we thought we were just the baddest kids ever, and so my mother was upset. So when I got home, his mom said, "Your mom is really upset. She's called, and you weren't here." And she's like, "I just took my medication. I can't drive, and your mom said she's not going to come get you." And I said, "Oh, great. So what do I do?" And she's like, "Well, you're welcome to stay the night here if she'll let you." Which I know my mother, and I knew not being home by what time being to that house. And she told
trouble
me,
was coming.
Oh man, she was like, pendejo, you think you're so smart, why don't you walk home? And she made a little comment, which Mexican moms like to say. And my dad's Caucasian, my mom's Mexican, right? So I grew up in two different cultures. But my mom was very adamant. She goes, you know what? You go ahead and walk home. I hope the devil don't get you. She said that,
man.
And I was like, oh my gosh. I mean, she was very angry, So I hung up, and my friend said, "What you said?" And of course, I didn't have a cell phone. I was just the phone in my ear, with no speaker. And I said, my mom told me that the devil, she hopes the devil don't get me, and I better walk home. And my friend's like, he goes, you're in trouble, bro. I said, yeah, I'm in trouble, man. I said, but I guess I better start walking. So he went with me to the store, and he told his mother, I'm going to walk him to Henderson's house. Now, Daniel Henderson was our friend, and he lived down the street, and him and his brother Andy, they worked on bikes. And so we were going to, I was like, you know what, walk me to Henderson's, walk with me, whatever, and I'll pick up a bike from there. And then, now, the only reason that I would have somebody walk with me was not because we were scared of the boogeyman or anything like that, but because we had enemies. Growing up like that, it was where he lived was the barrio. And, we had the neighboring area. You didn't want to be walking through there at night at a certain time because there were other kids out there we fought with them. Yeah. And so I said, maybe you can, walk, it's already late, who knows what they're doing. Hopefully they're not watching, and just walk me up there to Henderson's. I'll grab a bike, and then, I'll ride the bike the rest of the way home. And so walking back from the Circle K, was a convenience store, and we get to the corner, and we're talking, and I'm complaining. My mom's so mean, man, blah, 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 which in reality, it's not really. I shouldn't have been out that late anyway. And she was being nice by letting me stay out that late. And of course I didn't listen. And, we are walking. My friend puts up his arm, and it kind of, my chest, stops me. And I stopped, and I look up, and he goes, "What is that?" And there was this, what we thought was a black German Shepherd dog looking thing, sitting in a ditch. And I said, what the heck is that? And so now we had a friend that had a German Shepherd. And that was even weirder because this was in front of actually between kind of the two houses. And our friend John's dog was not that big. But none of the dogs in the neighborhood were barking. This thing was like digging like in like a ditch. It was like moving its, body around like it was digging or something. And I was like, what is that? And he was like, I don't know, man. And so we kept walking. I said, is that Misty? Because that was a dog's name. And he goes, I don't think so. And as we got closer, he goes, that's not a dog. That's like a wolf. And then we see this humongous head. And then where the front legs and paws should have been, they come up off the ground. And it was arms.
Jeez.
And he was just like, oh my gosh. And we're saying all kinds of expletives. And, I was carrying one of those big, like, drinks from Circle, those big, like 32 ounce.
Yeah, like the big gulp. Yeah. Well, those
and I had like drinks, a hot dog or something, some kind of junk in my hand, and I was just like, I felt all the blood drain from my face, and this thing stood up, and it took like 2 steps, and it was across the road. And it was enormous, 7.5 feet tall.
Jeez.
And so I just was like, what the? And so then all of a sudden I feel this burning on my neck. And I looked down, and my bottom of my pant leg had Dr. Pepper all over it, and there was ice on the ground. And it was like that moment in time where everything's kind of, it's like frozen, and
right.
It's so weird, it's like everything's moving in slow motion. And I look up, and my friend, I hear my name being called over and over again, and my friend's running. And he's going back toward his house. And my neck was burning because he had ripped my shirt trying to, I know now, he was trying to pull me to snap me out of it. I just was standing there, and I looked down at my legs, and it was like I couldn't move them. And that was the only time that I can think of, since then, that I've like frozen like that. And I just, at that moment, I was like, I'm not able to move. And I just was like, I better move. And I just started running. But I wasn't running very fast. It was like my legs weren't working. You know what I mean? It was like, how when you're in a dream, I just don't like to describe it, and you feel like you're not running fast, because you're not, your body's just laying there. So I just felt like, dude, is this a dream? Is this really happening? And there was a house right next to his, this big yellow house, no longer there. It's been tore down. And some drug dealers had lived there, and they had pit bulls, and the city made them put up this big old 8-foot fence around. It was so weird. So anyway, they had these pit bulls, and they were gone. Nobody was living in it at the time. And I just started walking past that house, and the people, like I said, their people would come and go in that house. There was always some bad people living there. And nobody was there at the moment. There was nobody there. And there was this big creature that came between the two houses, and it went up to the fence, and I had to walk by it to get inside. And his dad came outside and told me to come on, hurry up, in Spanish, And so I walked by this creature, and I remember looking I was scared to turn my head and face it directly, but I was kind of looking over, like, to my right. And creatures, weird looking paw, foot, I don't know what you want to call it. It doesn't look like a man's foot at all, but it looks kind of like a cross between a paw and a foot. That's all I can describe. It's weird.
Man.
And
so you saw this thing, like, I don't mean to stop you at all, Josh, but this thing, you're seeing this thing dead on, and it's 7 feet tall. Did it make any noise? I mean, was there any smell or noise or anything that you remember when you saw it? And how far away was it?
It wasn't far at all. 10, 12 feet maybe.
Oh my God, that close? Wow.
Yeah, it was at its closest point, yeah. And I was having to walk by it. And if it wasn't for Salvador, my friend's dad, coming out on the porch, and he was brave beyond, I just can't even, he didn't even look over at it. He just told me to come on. And I just focused on him, and then I ran past it, and it was like judging the fence. I believe like it was going to jump over it. Knowing what I know now about these creatures, I know that they could easily scale that fence. And everybody's always like, well, if it wanted to get you, it would have got you. And I was like, well, I think it was trying, and I think it was going to. And I think that I ran past it quick enough, and it saw other people, and it just thought better of it, and said whatever. And it was holding onto the fence, with one of its weird looking hands.
Yeah.
And it just looked like a timber wolf, a blackish gray werewolf looking creature. I mean, a friend of mine, Charlie Perez, who did my action figure line, he did a copy of this. And I've shown it on a few shows that I did. I don't do a lot of shows, actually. I don't usually take invites to do shows. This is only like the second or third show I've done since October now. In October,
thank you for coming on ours, by the way, Josh.
No, Doug reached out to me, and I was like, you know what? It was in early February, and I thought, you know what? I'm probably not going to be doing anything at that time. Unfortunately, I'm very busy, actually, but I'm tonight. I just we're getting ready for this deep freeze here in Texas, and temperatures are going to drop into the teens, so we got to get everybody in position. So I figured, you know what, I have a little bit of time before I have to go and deal with all that. But I don't do a lot of shows, but in October I did like several, like 6 or 7. And it was a decision made by my team to promote our show and our brand. So anyway, Charlie Perez, he did this recreation of this creature, and he brought it to me. He lives in Houston. He came to Austin. He went to my friend's restaurant, Spinners. It's one of my sponsors. And Great Turkey Lakes, folks, we're in Austin, Texas. And so he lays it on the table, and I've had people draw this thing for me, and they never came close to this. And he sculpted it, all except the ears. The ears were a little bit off. The ears weren't, and they should have been more straight up and down. But he made another one, and he corrected that. So, I mean, it's a really good rendition, of what I saw, of what we saw, and so my friend has always apologized to me for leaving me for running, and I was like, dude, I don't know why you're apologizing. I'm the one that just stood there, and you tried to get me to go, and I just was so frozen in fear that I just stood there,
Yeah.
And I don't fault him for that, So having seen this thing, I wanted answers. I wanted to know what it was that I saw. And I just started going and doing research and talking to people. I knew that I wasn't the only one who had seen it, because my tia, she died years ago, but my great aunt, her name was Hova. Yeah. And Hova was constantly talking about the Hombre Lobo and the Cadejo and La Llorona and Chupacabra. And I thought, mentiras, man. There's stories to scare kids, like El Cucuy. Everybody's got a Cucuy in their house. The Fantasmo and, all these other, the Wendes, I never believed in any of it. I thought it was all just a bunch of fairy tales. You tell kids that so they'll behave. And
to scare the kids, keep them inside.
Yeah. And then they don't act bad, but we would go to San Juan, to the mission down in South Texas every year. And I'm not Catholic, and my mom wouldn't either anymore. She'd converted to Baptist. And my dad and her both became Baptist when we were living out in West Texas. Yeah. And when we moved down to West Texas. So this is after we had come back to Central Texas. My dad was working at the power plant for Alcoa. And so my aunt was always telling me, she's like, mijo, the Hombre Lobo is out there, the Cadejo is out there. And she told me some pretty wild stories. We'd be going to San Juan, and she would tell me about the Manos Peludos, which is the hairy hand, which is a really weird Mexican folk tale. And she would tell me about La Llorona, which is the lady who lost her children. Yep. The different versions of it. She either killed them and she's looking for them, or they drown and she's searching for them. And so, I never wanted to go, to the mission because it was such a boring, long 6-hour drive. Texas is such a big place. Just from South Central Texas down into the valley is a 6-hour drive. Yeah. And so I just was like, I don't feel like going down in the valley. It's boring. As a kid, And she would entertain us with these stories. And I'll tell you what, by the time I got to San Juan, I was lighting candles left and right because I was scared. Because she would scare the crap out of me with these stories, me and the other kids.
Oh, yeah. I mean, those cautionary tales as a kid, or the ghost stories, the monster tales. I mean, they impacted all of us. We all had them.
Absolutely. And it was a cultural thing in Mexican culture. It's just you're brought up with these stories. El Chupacabra and all these other weird
up north there's the Wendigo.
The Wendigo. Oh yeah, absolutely. Yep. You guys have it in Goat Man, and there's all kinds of stories. Michigan is the Dog Man. Wisconsin, you have Dog Man too, and Minnesota, and all these different, and Bigfoot, Sasquatch, and we. As children, when I got older, I just thought I relegated it to the realm of fantasy. This is what this is. I'm not into it. And just because I don't believe in it, When I saw that, though, it changed everything for me. I was like, I told my friends, I was like, if that exists, what else is out there, And I actually remembered when I was a kid, there were some friends of mine that we played Little League together. We went to school together. And they had told me a story that had happened to them, and it immediately came to my mind. Like the next day, we went to school, and I went to one of my friends, and I still good friends with them to this day. And the other two I'm not as close to, or whatever. But I talked to them all, and got their story. I said, "You remember when we were kids? Which wasn't but a few years before, And that's when we were little. We were playing Little League, and you guys were near the Hidalgo Park, and you saw the weird dog-looking things. Can you tell me about that?" And my friend was like, "Yeah, I can tell you." And he could tell I was kind of shaken up, and he goes, "What? You look shook up. What's going on?" I was like, I saw something last night with my friend Daniel. And so he, we met up at lunch, and me and my friend Daniel told them what we saw. And two of them were at lunch that day, and they proceeded to tell us, to reiterate the story that I vaguely remembered as a kid. And not that I wasn't still a kid, but it was, when I was little, like 9 or 10. And then this happened, years later, several years later. And so they told me a really weird story. Excuse me, I got to clear my throat. This mess, this COVID.
Sure. Oh no, take your time, man. Take your time.
But they told me this story that they were walking their bikes in the south side of Taylor on the other side of the railroad tracks. And right there by the railroad tracks, there's been a lot of weird things that have happened over the years. I've done a lot of research into that, And they heard some people talking, and of course, there's a big interchange there with the railroads, because there's a lot of cotton that's produced in that area, or there used to be. And the cotton would get shipped all over the place. And the cotton gins were always going, and there would be cotton all over the streets, at certain times of the year. And so there was a railroad interchange right there, and they were walking, but this was in the summertime. And they were walking, and they heard people talking, and they kind of got afraid because there were always these like hobos, like rail riders. They could be malicious too. I mean, they were known to attack and rob people, and so you didn't really hang out in certain spots. And they thought that these guys had kind of come from an area called the Line, which doesn't exist now. It was basically a segregation thing. It was like that. Once you cross over the line, you're not in.
Exactly.
You're in a bad area. It's a bad part of town.
Wrong side of the tracks. Yeah,
wrong side of the tracks, literally. Yeah, and so, but where Hidalgo Park was, it was on the other side of the tracks, but it was to the west of town. There was nothing beyond that. And so now there's all these subdivisions and all this stuff down there. It's all grown up, and now Samsung is coming to town, and Taylor's going to be all big and blown up, whatever. But at that time it was very rural, and it was the edge of town, and they heard these people talking in Spanish, and they thought these are Mexican nationals, and they're in that Johnson grass. Maybe they were taking a nap, they were laying down in there, and they saw some movement, and then they see this big dog pop up, and they see its head, and what they thought was a dog, and it turned to be a big wolf, and it just jumped out onto the road. I said it was so big that it literally covered the road. And this road's big enough for two vehicles to pass by. It's a 2-lane road,
Yeah.
And they said that it began to speak like in Spanish. And these other two dogs jumped out on either side of it, and it was talking to them in Spanish.
The animal was. Whoa. Hold on. Josh.
Wolf was, yeah.
The wolf was speaking in Spanish? That's crazy.
Yeah. And those two young men at that time, one of them was, I think he's probably older than me by several months. The other one was a little younger than me. And then the other kid, I think, is about a year older than us. And when I talked to him, he described it as big black dogs that looked a little shaggy like wolves, And I know now that would be a cadejo. The cadejo is the black dog. It's kind of like old shuck in English. Now, I know that there's some sort of correlation between that and this dogman thing I saw, but they look a little bit different, and I've had encounters with the black dog when I was 17. I talk about that on my show too. I was with my friend Tony Duran. I used to box with this kid, and when I moved to Austin, and we went back to my hometown, and we had a run-in with these black dogs, or wolves, whatever you want to call them. They never stood up on two legs or did anything like that, but these ones did. The ones that were in this story with these particular friends, one of them that was talking in Spanish, he said its mouth was moving, and then it was almost like, how when a movie, when they do a bad job of dubbing the voiceover, the mouth moving and the words, the mouth had closed at one point, and it was still words going. Which is just weird, and they were like, is this... he said it was almost like it was in our heads. The voice was in our heads, but it wasn't. I don't know what that means, but that's how he described it to me. And this thing stood up. And when it stood up, he said there was like a weird, like a poop, 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 like a pop, and it stood up. And then it walked across the road, and it stared at him with its head bent at a weird angle, smiling, kind of showing them, like, look what I can do. That's what I gathered from it, and then they, of course, there's three of them. One of them, he readily admitted that he began to cry. He was like, I began to cry, because I felt embarrassed for crying, but he goes, I cried, and it was just a terrifying thing. He goes, I thought these things were going to kill and eat us. He said, just then a truck turns off of goes over the tracks and starts to come our direction, and they all three just jumped. They leapt over the road down into the ditch and ran into the Johnson.
Took that opportunity to get up. Yeah, took the opportunity to get out of there. Wow.
Yeah, and so these dogs left, or the wolves or whatever they were. They took off, and they were, thank God that truck came, and so these kids took off running down the road, and one of them didn't have a bike, and so they gave him a ride, and they started utilizing their bikes and got out of there. But, it was just a terrifying incident that happened to them. And my one friend, he said, I'll never forget it as long as I live. He works here in Austin at a computer company. I saw him one day. I was in a restaurant 5 or 6 years ago. And we talked about that in front of one of my nephews and my godson. And he told that story, in front of them, and they heard it, and I was like, see, this is, these people saw these things. This isn't bull crap. There was a lot of people who had seen these things, and I spent time just going around talking to different people and getting their encounters, getting their stories just in my local area. And so I went back onto Dogman Encounters, and it was episode 55 was mine. And there was episode 57, 58, 59. And one of those, I just talk about the folklore and did some research on it, and then on one of those episodes I tell that story, I believe, and you know. But the thing about that show is that he was very grounded in that it's a physical creature, and he didn't allow for any supernatural. Like, you know, you had to leave out certain parts, you know, and so a lot of those stories, I just couldn't do them justice on that show because, you know, if it didn't fit the narrative that it was a flesh and blood type entity, you know, because at that time he was very grounded in that. And then you just kind of had to leave it on the porch. You couldn't really talk about it, and you couldn't tell the whole story. You know, there was a case that I looked into.
I was going to say though, Josh, not to stop you at all, but when you're not allowed to tell the story its entirety, no matter how fantastic it might be to some, it really kind of, you know, takes away from the encounter. I mean, so I get that, man, because we over here on this show, Doug and I, you know, we have our own ideas, you know, about the paranormal and cryptids and things like that. But we also entertain all sides of it. Yeah, I mean, because their theory is just as valid as mine. Until it's 100% proven, their theory is just as valid as my theory is. So you gotta hear it all out, because it all has that piece to that paranormal puzzle, man. Is my opinion.
We don't know what we don't know. I've got to ask you a question though, Josh. Is, you know how Bigfoot, there's always this geographic kind of MO, woods, water, and hills. Bigfoot, woods, water, and hills. But with Dogman, is there a pattern of where they're seen? I mean, you've described urban area sightings. Are there sightings in the forest? Are they just in the city? I mean, what patterns have you noticed?
Most of them are not in the city. Actually, some friends of mine, they have a show. It's called These Woods Are Haunted. And I'm sure you guys know it's a travel channel. And they, you know, they were looking this past, well, they've used my witnesses before. And so, you know, they had their show this season 3. And I did, one of my shows was called The Church of the Forgotten. And I was on season 3, episode 1, the first set. You know, they do 2, you know, sets per episode. And me and my buddy Scorpion, my nickname is Wolf. Everybody calls me Wolf. And it's because of that encounter. It's actually how I got that name. And because it was, at first, it was kind of like being teased because I was talking about it. And, you know, and I found out that a lot of people didn't talk about it. It wasn't like a common thing to talk about. It was kind of like you saw it, just be quiet about it because people would think you're crazy. But I found that there was a lot of people who were you know, like that in my hometown. But you know, it is what it is. They were calling me Wolf Boy and all this other stuff, you know, teasing me. Not like, you know, in a mean way, but it did get old, you know what I mean? And I got in a few fights because of it. And you know, but then it stopped. And then over time it just became Wolf. And then the root of where it came from just kind of got lost, you know. But yeah, in my research and looking into it, I wouldn't call the early years research. I just somebody asking questions looking for answers as a kid, you know. Until eventually I moved to Austin and I just kind of tucked it in the back rearview mirror and said, you know what, I'm not going to worry about this anymore. You know, I'm never going to really know what it was. all I can do is talk to people who've had encounters. And you know, you don't always, you just kind of takes you in a big circle, you know. But a lot of the encounters are in the woods, and there's an area outside of Austin called Devil's Backbone, and I've spent a lot of time out there, done a lot of research, and I found that the Bigfoot sightings tend to be on one side, and the Dogman sightings on the other. If that makes any sense, it's weird. It's like they're, and then there's one area called Purgatory Road where people see this black goat man, which is just so insidious, this creature that people see. And it's often seen carrying like a deer's head. Some people claim that they've seen it carrying a human head, but it's always carrying something. And it comes out of this old cemetery right there by the cemetery on Purgatory Road. And now I did a story on some people. It's called the Hernandez Ranch. If you're familiar with my work on Dogman Encounters, I did a lot of research with this family, and I can't take all the credit for it. I had a team of people that we all worked together. My brother, they call him Diablo, and my buddy Scorpion, and Anthony, my nephew, and my nephew Zane, my brother Diablo's son, and we all worked together. And there was a couple other guys too, and we knew these people for a couple years, and we never knew that they had this activity. And one day I was working this long weekend, literally 24-hour shifts, and we're shorthanded, and we had a lot of work with this really large construction company. It's a national construction company, and these guys do all the cabinetry and all that stuff. They do a really good job, and so they do all these, and so they have these big crews. And one of the big bosses, for that company that was doing the cabinets and all that, he was listening to me to talk on a radio show. He goes, "Is that you talking?" I said, "Yeah, it's me." I was like, "I'm talking about this." It's kind of embarrassing, because this guy, I'd known him for a couple of years, and he's listening to me talk about these crazy creatures and stuff. And he goes, "What are you talking about?" And I said, "Well, it's this creature. We call it Dogman. It's nothing. It's just like a wolf-looking thing." And he goes, "Wait, like, tell me about this thing, And I'm going like, "Oh my God, this guy's gonna think I'm nuts, dude." I said, "Well, I do a lot of research on these creatures, And he goes, "Have you ever seen one?" And I wasn't gonna lie to him. He can go to, the show and listen to talking about it. And I said, "Yes, yeah, I have." And he goes, "Me too." And I was like, "Oh man," I was like, "You're kidding me, man." This guy had actually, he'd actually seen these things. And I said, "Really? Where did you see them at?" He goes, "On my property." And I was like, "On your property?" He goes, "Yeah." And I know that he had a couple of brothers and an uncle and a cousin and some other people that all worked for him. And they owned a ranch that was, well over 1,000 acres at one point, and then it got reduced because they had sold part of it. And their grandfather had originally worked for the people who owned the ranch, and then they partitioned it off and they gave him part of it because his family had worked for him for years. They sold it to him, or something like that, And he was telling me about it. And eventually we did go out there to the ranch in the daytime, not at night. But he said, "Yeah, these creatures, these things, I don't know if it's the same thing." He goes, "But they have been on our property for a long time." And I said, "Hombre lobo." And he said, "Hombre lobo," like a wolf man looking. He's like, "They stand up on their hind legs." And I was like, "Yeah. Yeah, it's exactly what it is." So we started talking, and he goes, "We'll talk again later." He goes, "I got to go back." He was eating his lunch. And I was like, I was kind of relieved because I was thinking, these people, I think I'm crazy. But then I was like excited. I said, "Dude, what's this guy going to tell me, And so I called Scorpion. I said, "Hey, dude, this guy just came out here, And I said, "You know who he is?" I gave him the alias of Jerry, but his name is similar to that. But I said, "Hey, Jerry, he works, for the company that we're working with." And I said, "And he's seen these things, And so he started talking to me and to the other guys, him and his guys, and telling us all these things that had gone on. And, I took my journals out there because I didn't, I wrote everything in journals, as best I could. And my handwriting's really, because I've broken my fingers in boxing, but I took my journals out there and I just started writing down things he was telling me. I've never been one for tape recording. I don't know why. I've had bunches of them over the years and recorded a bunch of stuff, and I never use them hardly. Yeah. But I did record some of it, what he was saying, and my nephew one day said, "Hey, let's take the tape recorder," and we talked to them, and they began to tell us these stories, And I took it to Dogman Encounters. Well, anyways, that ranch is out on the other side of the Backbone, but it's like further down. It's like not on Devil's Backbone, but it's kind of in the vicinity. And so I went out there and I did a bunch of research in that area, and then on the Devil's Backbone and the surrounding communities and area. And from what I could tell, the Dogman tend to be on one side and the Bigfoot on the other. And I've been told that the LBL, the Land Between the Lakes, up in Kentucky, that it's very similar to that. It's like on the north side, I believe, is where they have the Bigfoot encounters, and the south side is the Dogman encounters. It's kind of like that out there too. You know, it's like the east side is like Bigfoot, and the west side is Dogman. And
I wonder why that is. I wonder. I suppose I've always wondered why if they intermingle, Dogman and Bigfoot.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, and we took a map of all the encounters that we had gotten from that area, and we decided to do the little dots. You know, we took like a marker, me and my brother, and we were putting blue dots for Bigfoot and red dots for Dogman, and we decided to put little black dots for the Goatman. And yeah, they do intersect, but there is definitely on one side of that, it's just Dogman. And then on the other side, it's just Bigfoot. But then kind of in the middle, they all kind of come together. And then in one part, kind of at the top of the Bigfoot, what I call the Bigfoot territory, there were some Dogman activity. Quite a bit, actually. But
okay.
that was just, you know, it doesn't go beyond that. You don't get any more Dogman stories. You get close to San Marcos.
Yeah, I've even heard that same kind of thing up in northern Minnesota. I'm doing some research at an area where they're having Dogman sightings and Bigfoot sightings. It's kind of weird. You know, I mean, it seems like you're in the twilight zone as a researcher, hearing these stories, but they're too weird to make up. They really are. And what people don't have anything to gain, Josh, by making these stories up, do they? I mean, they don't tell anybody. You got to drag the information out of people.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the thing. I mean, there's a lot of people who send me emails. There's a lot of people who send me messages on Messenger. Hell, half the listeners I have, and I have thousands of listeners, not just on YouTube. We're on like 12, 13 different platforms. And, you know, when you go to all these different people, you know, and they always have a story, you know, and a lot of them are there to listen because they've had something happen. And, I mean, you can get just doing the live stream on Tuesdays. I'll be on the live. There'll be a chat. We always get at least 300-400 people in there, you know, and just on the chat room, and then bunches of people, thousands of people will go and watch after the fact, you know. Mm-hmm. But during the live stream, you'll get people on there, and you'll talk to them later. You know, they'll say, "Yeah, I saw this, I saw that." One guy gave me a story. He said that his uncle was a werewolf. He's very adamant about it too. You know, I mean, like he keeps saying it too in the chat. You know, he's like out in Kerrville. You know, I did actually look some stuff up, and I found a friend of mine who used to live there. He was the curator for the museum there in Kerrville, and he said, "Dude, there were stories of Goatman and Wolfman looking creatures right there south of Kerrville." And then, I mean, there was a bunch of stories I got in a cluster over in Bandera in South Texas and in Alice, in Refugio. There's all these different places I've talked to people who've had encounters with things, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes you'll get people who this is very common too. People will live in a house that has a lot of activity, it's haunted, and lo and behold, you know, Dogman shows up.
Yeah.
You know, and it just seems so random, but it's not. I just don't believe that it is. And I was really, you know, when I was doing my research in this one case in particular where this little boy, he was seeing a Dogman in the window, and he was drawing pictures of it. And this kid, he was literally telling his mom, you know, and his dad, "There's this thing that visits me in the window," and he tells me, you know, that he's going to protect me from the Hat Man. And they said, "What is the Hat Man?" He said, "It's a shadow that appears in my bedroom, and he wants to take me away." And he says, "The big dog man." He even called it Dog Man, like he didn't know what that term meant, but he was saying that it was like a man, like a wolf, you know, like a dog. he said the big dog man comes and the big dog tells me that, that he'll protect me. He wants me to come outside and play with him.
Hi, I'm Randy, and this is Dave.
We're the founders of Bombas, the most comfortable socks in the history of feet.
So comfortable, we sold and donated millions of pairs.
To sell and donate a lot of socks, we became obsessed with comfort.
We reinvented the sock from the ground up, adding comfort innovations along the way.
It worked. People tried them, loved them, told their friends about them,
helping us sell and donate millions of pairs.
Try them now at bombas.com/comfy and get 20% off your first order. That's bombas.com/comfy.
And thank goodness he never went outside and did that. But, and then, of course, she thought this is all just a kid's imagination. One night she heard some growling outside, but she had been drinking a couple of glasses of wine, and she rationalized it. And I know this woman personally. Like, she's a little bit younger than me, but I know her personally. She lived in a town over. And her husband, I knew him too, and I'm not real fond of him. He's pretty bullheaded, and he likes to drink, and he's not a nice guy. He could be abusive to her, and he wasn't a nice person. He was mean to the children, mean to her. And of course he was stubborn, and he wouldn't leave when all this stuff was going on. And eventually this thing knocked the door in and nearly killed him. And it was his own fault. I mean, he kept living in denial about it, and these people that deny these things, it doesn't make it go away. I can tell you that. But they were having activity like out the wazoo. I'm talking like the blender came on in the middle of the night, and it was like somebody had thrown stuff in it. The washer and dryer had been thrown forward and ripped out of the wall. Just crazy things like that. Things the kids couldn't do, like the little kids couldn't do it. And ultimately led to her seeing this thing in her son's window. It was hanging halfway inside the room, lurched over the child, and she thought, man, this thing's going to grab my kid, and she screamed and she put her hand over her mouth and was like, oh my gosh. She fell backwards into the wall, and this thing looked up and saw her and began to growl and snarl and snap. And she said it looked very much flesh and blood. But when they moved, this shadow entity started appearing in the grandmother's house. And it was still, and she saw it too. One time when she was getting out of the shower, she saw this thing that looked like a. At first, she goes, I thought it was my towel, and I went to reach for it, and it moved. And she's like, it was a shadow entity, She said I could see it like red eyes, like staring at me. And she and her husband encountered that in the hallway, and I really was angry with her husband because he had been seeing these things and he was denying it and gaslighting her. Yeah. And then he admitted, and the reason I knew this because one of my cousins was actually friends with that guy's brother-in-law, with her brother. And they had all seen these things, and he had moved in and was staying there with them for a while. And he goes, dude, there was a bunch of weird stuff happening. Another friend of ours that was staying there, who since passed away, but he was staying there. Another guy that grew up a town over from me in a different town, and he was helping him work, whatever. And he had seen these things, witnessed all these encounters and things that were going on. See, now when I told that story on Dogman Encounters, I had to kind of wash it, to where it wasn't so much spooky paranormal. It was just Dogman, and you have to pick out just the Dogman story and not delve into the other aspects of it.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. A lot of times when you have these things going on too, I've noticed that there'll be UFO activity, there'll be Bigfoot activity, there'll be, there's a plethora of things that are going on, and you're supposed to deny, I guess, the existence of these other things and just be like, oh no, it's just a dog, man. The other stuff's not connected to it in any way at all. It's just the weirdest coincidence ever that my house is haunted and there's a dog man on the property.
And last week I saw a UFO. Yeah, because you're right. A lot of times things are connected. Like look at Skinwalker Ranch. Look at all the different phenomena that happens there.
Absolutely. And when you put it all together, There's a reason for Skinwalker Ranch, for example, when they talk about that, it's like it's in the path of the Skinwalker. Well, what does that mean exactly? Well, that means that it's an area that's highly charged with paranormal phenomena. That's exactly what it means. I mean, the Skinwalker being a supernatural entity. Well, even if it is a person who has taken the form of an entity, a creature, whatever, it's still bending the laws of physics as we know them.
Yeah.
So if this entity is able to do that, why do you think he's able to do that? Well, it's the area that it's in.
Mm-hmm.
And so that makes sense. It's the path of the Skinwalker. I mean, I've studied, multiple different types of these creatures, like the Wendigo. We've done shows on that with Ryan Tremblay. We did the Wendigo episodes. We delved deep. We did a deep dive, and he knows a lot about that and the different lore that surrounds it, and the Native American traditions. When you look at these creatures like the rake, okay, take that for example. Now that is a creepypasta name for what I believe is a real creature. I'm not talking about Slender Man. I'm talking about this rake-looking entity as a crawler. I've gotten tons of reports of that, and they tend to live in the same areas as Dogman. I had a colleague of mine tell me that's a hell of a way to make a living. I'm like, yeah, it definitely is, because I've heard stories of them fighting each other and killing each other and whatever, and Sasquatch tends to live right there with them, Typically, you don't see one and then see the other right there, but their territories overlap.
Say, Josh, can you describe the rake and tell us the sighting story?
Yeah, I can actually, because my dad's my dad's side of the family, his mother died when he was real young, but my Uncle Buck, and not John Candy Buck, but it's because everybody thinks it's funny when I say Uncle Buck. Now I had an Uncle Buck, and Buck had a deer lease adjacent to this property where one of my friends. So I knew that area pretty well, and I would go out there, and every time I went out there, I thought it was the coolest thing ever. I'd find Comanche arrowheads and flint, and then spearheads. It was crazy. It was really cool to go out there. And my Uncle Buck would always tease me about, "Oh, be careful, there's these he called them boogers." Like he would say that, or he'd say wood boogers, he'd call them, or they'd call them looky-loos, hide behind. They had these weird names. And he said some of them look like wolves,
Mm-hmm.
And I was a kid. I was like 8, I was like, what are you talking about, But my Uncle SD on my dad's side, he would do the same thing. They're about the same age, and they would tell me, but he was very adamant not to go. I could play anyone on the property, but don't go near this holler, because he said there were these Bigfoot down there that would kill and eat you. And he would always play and joke around with me, but then it seemed like he kind of got serious. And so Buck was kind of the same way. This area where I'm talking about is called Joppa. And right outside of Joppa, there was a lot of sightings of these dogman creatures and Bigfoot creatures. And so, years later, I started to realize that I don't think Buck or SD were playing around. I think they're being serious. And so one of the things I learned was that there's this other creature that I know now that we call the rake. And my friend Rocky had gone down there. I since have gotten permission to use his name. So, but anyway, Rock had gone down there and he had gone hunting, and I took him out there and told him, you can go to the deer lease over there, whatever. And he went with a friend of his, and I was working at a nightclub downtown on 6th Street, which is as scary as any haunted house, I can tell you that. In the years I worked down there, I got stabbed, nearly died, beat the crap out of a lot of people, nearly went to jail multiple times because of it. But anyway, I was working at the club, and he shows up, and he's real shook up, and he's chain smoking, and I'm thinking, what's this guy on, And I started talking to him, and he goes, "Dude, I'm completely sober, man." And I asked him that point blank, I said, "What do you want, dude? You're acting crazy." Mm-hmm. He said, "I'm going to tell you something, and you're going to think I'm nuts, dude." He goes, "But I want you to believe me." And what's even weirder is that his older brother, who was actually from my hometown, had seen 3 dogman type creatures about 5 or 6 years before his encounter with what he saw. But it was on the adjacent property. And he said, I was out there, he goes, and I kept my eye open for Bigfoot and, well, these weird dog creatures you were talking about, whatever, werewolves, whatever. He goes, I didn't see anything like that. He goes, but we saw something weirder. I think it was an alien. And I was well, I was kind of laughing. I was like, what? Like, you saw an alien, And he was like, yeah. I don't know what else it could be. He goes, and his friend Sam was with him. He's standing right there. And I looked at him and I said, did you see it too? And he said, yeah. And I said, you guys were sober. He goes, we were sober, completely sober, I said, okay. Well, so what happened? So we went and we sat down, at one of the tables. And I was the manager at that time. So he told me, he said, dude, I'm not going to come in your bar and lie to you, dude. He goes, I'm being dead serious. He goes, we encountered something. It was like on a tree. And he said that then he went in to describe, it was like this, what I now know is this classic rake type entity, the look of this thing.
Mm-hmm.
And he said that it was so white that it was almost translucent, and that it was wrapped around the tree, and it looked like it had webbing in between its arms and legs. And he said that it was like wrapped around almost like how a monkey would wrap itself around a tree. And so when he was describing it, I said, dude, it sounds like you're describing a flying squirrel with no tail.
Yeah.
And no fur, but it's really large. And you want me to believe that this thing's head was turned, I guess what they found out was actually like its head was facing toward them, but they could see the spine and the back, so the head was turned around all the way, like completely back. And he said that this thing opened its mouth and it made this weird noise, like an echoing noise. And he said that it jumped off of the tree and crawled around on all fours, and then its head spun back around, and then it just would move its body interchangeably, like the arms and legs could go either way, could flip backwards or forward. Yeah, and when they described it and how it crawled down, and it was about 6.5 feet tall, and it was moving really fast on all fours, they were just like, we got to get out of here. And so they left. But, I've gotten many, many reports of this creature. And when I talked about it on Dogman Encounters, because by the time that I had done my 12th or 13th episode on Dogman Encounters, I was given a lot longer leash. I was able to talk more about these other things. And, Mr. Cundiff had gotten more comfortable with me talking about those things because he knew his audience wanted to hear it. And so I told him, about that story, and there was another story that I'd gotten from a guy, we dubbed him as Ernest, and he was telling me on his ranch down near Houston that there was a dog man that killed one of these creatures, and that it threw it out into the pasture, and that there were something was killing their cattle. And they were angry because they thought it was the dog man that was doing it, which does sound par for the course. They do that. They prey on livestock. They'll kill your animals, your pets. They do this kind of stuff, And so they were getting angry. They had a meeting, and his abuelito, his grandfather, had said that we need to get rid of these creatures. We need to kill them. We're going to start shooting them, And a couple of days later, one of these dogmen dropped something which they identified as this weird-looking rake-like creature. And so one of them said, hey, let's get out of here, because they're right by the tree line. They're like, these things could come out of the woods. So they took off, and then they got the idea, hey, let's go get our cell phone, let's go get the phone, and come back and take a picture. When they came back, there was nothing there.
Yeah.
And so there was just like this gelatinous, weird stuff on the grass, which you can't really make out what it was. Which you get that too, with one of these creatures that people have seen them like exuding like this ooze, like ectoplasm, and I don't know what that is, but these creatures, they look like the clear You know, they're so white. And just gotten so many reports of them. Gotten them in town. One guy saw him from his balcony in his apartment. They were having a little house party, and 2 or 3 of his guests came out, and they looked, and they saw this weird thing suspended between 2 vehicles. And I thought, man, that is insane. What if somebody's just walking, you know, to their vehicle in the middle of the city, you know, in an apartment, and this thing is there, just kind of suspended between 2 vehicles, you know.
Have they been known to attack people?
Yeah, actually they have. Yeah, there have been multiple encounters with these things, of people being chased by them jumping on people from trees and things like that.
Oh, jeez.
You know, I don't know. I mean, like, you know, I know a guy who claimed that he was out researching a Bigfoot. That there was a Bigfoot out in Giddings, Texas, that had killed several livestock and several sheep. It was sheep and cattle. And this guy went out there looking for this Bigfoot, and he runs across one of these creatures, and it lunged at his ATV, and it knocked him off his ATV. And he shot at it, is what he claimed. He told us that he shot at it and that it crawled away. And this guy's a rancher, you know, he's like 67 years old at the time. It was about 4 or 5 years ago. And like, why would he lie about that? You know, I met him through his grandson.
Sure. I mean, look, all these people that come forward at you know, you have to ask yourself, what do they have to gain by telling me this tale? You know, most of them have nothing to gain.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, and that's the linchpin, is that, you know, I mean, if there's somebody who's looking to be on TV, they want to be famous or something, you know, you can tell. I mean, you know, typically, when I did the show, These Woods Are Haunted, I didn't tell my Dogman encounter because, like I told Michael Sheehan, the guy that was the producer of it or whatever, he told me, you should tell your Dogman encounter sometime. And I was like, yeah, but it didn't happen in town. The show's called These Woods Are Haunted and didn't happen in the woods. But he's like, well, no, but your story of the Church of the Forgotten did. Now that story was actually it's sort of I don't know what I guess a ghost story that happened to me and several of my guards. I run a security company.
Yeah, I saw that. Prepping for the show, I really quickly I watched it. That's a heck of a thing that happened to you guys. And I don't mean to stop you at all, but could you give the quick synopsis of? I mean, I think you're about to do that, but it was on These Woods Are Haunted, and man, after watching that, and I was going to tell you, that was legit, huh? I mean, that was a hell of a haunting.
Well, you know, I think what you know, I went through so many guards, and you know, the first one that said it, I kind of was suspicious because a lot of these guys knew that I was into the paranormal. I've always been into it, and I've always researched it, and I've always written people's encounters down. I used to have about 30, 40 journals full of entries, you know, until a vindictive ex burned a bunch of them to try to spite me. And it worked. It pretty much it got under my skin like nobody's business, but I can forgive a lot of things, but I will never speak to her, you know, because of that. But, you know, it is what it is. But this one guard, he had said something about it, and I thought, you know, he probably it's a long drive from Austin. Probably just didn't want to do it, you know. And then the next guard, same thing. You know, I'm like, whoa, wait a minute now. You know, maybe there's something to this, you know, because I didn't just believe it right off the bat, you know. Third guard, you know, then you're going like, okay, something is wrong here. I was bogged down working my own sites. I didn't have time to go and deal with that. We had an alarm that it wasn't working at an aquarium place, and so I was watching and it was a very nice post. It was very peaceful. So they're watching tropical fish. And I thought, I'm not driving all the way out there. So I told my partner, I said, I'm not driving out there, dude. I said, my business partner, I said, if you want to go drive out there and do it, go ahead. And he said, well, they're going to pay us more. And I was like, they were already paying us pretty good. I was like, really?
Yeah.
So I decided to stick with it, and I sent another guard out there, and they didn't pan out. And then it ended up being Scorpion, who, very tough guy, never failed me before as far as, like, you know, being afraid of anything. I put him in the hood, and I put him in haunted places before, and we scoffed at it. I was like, dude, come on, dude. This is, you know, when I drove out there, it was pretty ominous at night. And I thought, man, so I left him there and I said, you sure you're going to be okay? He's like, yeah, I'm sure. And then something grabbed him, and we were up at the casino at the Choctaw. We were having a good time. We were coming back from a long trip a couple summers ago, and my wife finally managed to give him a few shots and pry the story out of him. And she's like, because he would never tell the full story ever. And she finally got it out of him. And then when he talked about it, he goes, wow. He goes, that's the first time I've ever really talked about it. And he goes, it felt therapeutic,
Yeah.
And so we hung out and we ate dinner. And I said, well, it feels better to talk about it, because he never would. And he admitted to me, he said, and my wife, he said, I've never been that afraid in my life. He goes, even the night that Wolf got stabbed, which was he was there when I got stabbed and really died. And he said this was still scarier than anything I've ever been through.
Damn, yeah. Well, that's crazy, and that's saying something. That's saying something. I mean, usually people in your line of work there in security have kind of seen it all, they've done it all, and it's pretty hard to get under their skin. But that case, it really seemed to have gotten under their skin.
Yeah, and if you want to listen to that, you can watch it on Travel Channel. That's kind of an abbreviated video version of it. And they got some dude that wore a man bun to play me, which was kind of something that I had told Michael Sheehan. I was like, I'm not really interested in some weird actor playing me, dude. I mean, if you want the story, that's great, but I don't want to be, but they did it anyway. But you can go to the archives of my show. It's called Church of the Forgotten. That was one of my encounters. I've had several things happen to me in my life in the paranormal realm. Never been abducted by aliens, thank God, but I'm only 46. Who knows?
Still got time.
Yeah.
Wow, man. Well, thanks a ton for coming on. I know you're under the weather, and this hour and a half has just flown by talking to you, and it's been a really, really interesting time talking to you, Josh. I really have liked talking. The story is just great, and again, if you've never heard Josh's podcast, Paranormal Round Table is what it's called. You gotta want to look that up. It's on several different platforms, including the YouTube, like you'd mentioned. Check it out. It is really an interesting show. I think you'll like it a lot. If you like this show, you're gonna like that show as well. But yeah, so what do you now when these cryptids though? Getting back to Dogman, getting back to the rake. Is Bigfoot kind of? Is he kind of the boss of the woods, or what's going on with that? or because you hear about Sasquatch, you would think that they would be the apex predator, or is that not the case?
I don't know. It's weird to me. I kind of look at the rake like the leopard of the of this whole. I was watching a video. It was very horrific. Actually, I didn't even finish it. It was so bad. But somebody had posted on Facebook, these lions had cornered a leopard and they were killing it. And it was terrible. And of course, these idiots, they're just filming it. They're not even trying. I couldn't sit there and watch this horrific thing. But I kind of thought about that. I thought the rake is living in a dangerous territory because it's not as big or as powerful. Doesn't seem to be as the Bigfoot, the Sasquatch, the Dogman.
Yeah.
And so, like I said, one of my colleagues said that's a hell of a way to make a living. I wouldn't want to be the rake out there with those guys.
Yeah.
But, I mean, they tend to stay up in trees and stuff, which is probably smart, But I don't know who the boss of the woods is. I guess whoever is got the numbers or if it's an alpha male Bigfoot, then maybe it's the boss. And if it's an alpha male Dogman, I don't know.
Sure. Yeah. Interesting.
So, Josh, if somebody runs into one of these weird creatures, I don't care if they're out taking their garbage out at night or they're out in the woods alone, they run into something weird, what should they do? Should they stare and face it? Should they run? Should they talk to it? Do you have any advice?
I wouldn't try talking to any of them. I would probably just go inside and give me a call and give me your story.
There you go.
Just go inside.
Don't stop. Don't try to get don't try to get one-on-one. Don't try to get Dr. Phil with it. Ask what his problems is. If he needs a hug, nope, just get the hell out of there.
Are there just as many sightings in the daytime as at night, or do most of them happen at night of these creatures?
I think most of them tend to happen at night, but there are a lot of daytime sightings too. Yeah. So it just dusk, it tends to be that they're coming out and people can see them, hunters see them,
Josh, you got a website?
Yeah, it's prtpodcast.com, and my email address is joshturner@prtpodcast.com. Go and send me your stories, and or maybe you can come on the show and I can tell them for you, or you can come on the show, however you want to do it. We do 2 or 3 hours on a live stream on Tuesdays, and we're there. I didn't do it this Tuesday because, like I said, I'm under the weather, and I apologize to you guys. I'd forgotten that we were doing this, and I would have had more prepared, but that's it was just so got ill. The last week I've been battling this, and I'm getting over the hump here, and I'll be back in the saddle on Tuesday. We drop an episode for the podcast every Friday, so
check it out, guys. Paranormal Round Table. You heard it. The website, the man, how to get a hold of him. Josh, again, thank you so much for coming to the show. Doug, we got to get out of here, man.
Yep. Thanks, Josh.
Boy, do they go quick. They just go so quick, these shows. Till next time, guys, take care of each other, love each other. Hey, be watching out for that dog man. And if you do meet him, don't say hi. Just run away and call Josh. That's all you got to do. It's that simple. Till next time, guys.
Finally, a bed that senses snoring and automatically responds. Meet the Ergo Smart Base from Tempur-Pedic, our first system that detects snoring, then automatically adjusts by raising the bed. Get your best sleep, all night, every night. For a limited time, save up to $500 on select adjustable mattress sets and experience the deep, undisturbed sleep of Tempur-Pedic. Get full offer details at TempurPedic.com.
Now through February 16th, join a clean and spacious Planet Fitness for zero enrollment and only $10 a month. With tons of equipment and free fitness training, it's the perfect place for everybody to work out.
Even me, Mr. I can't sleep at night, so I keep dozing off during the day.
Especially you, Snoozy. You'll rest easier and feel fit-tacular.
Wait, how did you get in here?
Join in club or at planetfitness.com. Zero enrollment, $10 a month, cancel anytime. Hurry, deal ends February 16th. See club for details.